I don't know if I had been on stage and he said that, I think I probably would have just said, "Yo, mama."
One thing that I thought was interesting that came up was this recent situation at the BAFTA Awards where you had Delroy Lindo as well as Michael B. Jordan were there to present an award. And I just wondered from someone like your standpoint, and to lay it up even more, a gentleman was in the audience. He had Tourette's, and that is a medical condition where you blurt out certain things. It says that it's uncontrollable. And in that moment or in that night, he said the N word a few times, according to reports, as well as other things. And I instantly thought about Delroy Lindo, who is a older black man who is old enough to experience people using that word in such a painful, hurtful way in their day-to-day life. Just to lay that question up to you, what was your thoughts about seeing that? And yeah, I just would love to know what were your immediate reaction to seeing that.
I thought it was just unfortunate, but the fact that the guy does have the Tourette's, evidently he was thinking it, and that
Right.
probably a lot of people there were thinking it, but they don't say it. But his because of the Tourette's, it just comes out, and he verbally said it, and I know he's
Yeah.
afterwards. I heard he was very apologetic, but it just goes to show you, what is on people's minds sometimes, and they candy cover and coat it and different things of that nature, which is okay, but to blurt it out like that and have that happen, I'm sure you could see the looks on their faces as they were up on stage there, and it was like it took everybody aback. Everybody got kind
Yeah.
of, did we really hear what we thought we heard? And at that time, nobody obviously knew that the guy had Tourette's. And it just,
Right.
hecklers are always usually out there doing things from time to time with people that are on stage or entertaining and saying some very derogatory things that try to throw you off your game. But, they stood still. They held their own. They kept their dignity. They didn't, reply to it or anything like that. So, I
Yeah.
mean, it was what it was.
Just because you are also an actress, and I'm sure that you've done awards yourself and you've been a presenter of different number of things that we can get into. If you were in that position, how do you navigate that? Do you stay professional, or does it kind of create some type of reaction maybe that's tied to things that you've experienced?
Well, I have such a comedic attitude about everything. I make everything light. I laugh. I make people laugh when they want to cry. And, I'm a go-to person, a guru for my friends and different people. But I don't know if I had been on stage and he said that, I think I probably would have just said, "Yo, mama." I would. I probably would say, "Yo, mama," and I would have been looking around. But it depends. You never know what you're going to do and say in that circumstance. But I have had people flip me off on the road and do stuff, and that's my kickback to people, especially when they use that N word. And then people on the phone that you get those
Yeah.
calls, and they're very belligerent, and scammers and different things. I just love to build them up, and I like to troll online sometimes and just get that out,
Mm.
jig. I never go back to see what they say. I really don't care, but I got my little 15 cents in. But I mean, really, I don't know what I would have did, but I just
Yeah.
probably would have just kept
So
on
you just
trucking.
said something. You just said something interesting. People kind of like troll you online, like right now, and like in today's time, they throw stuff at you, or yeah.
Well, I troll. I go scrolling when I'm looking on Instagram or Facebook, or
Uh huh.
I don't really do
Uh huh.
TikTok, but sometimes every now and then I'll run into some Trump supporters on
Okay.
something, and they're saying how wonderful and great our president is. And those are the people I like to say, "Are you really here in the same country we're in?" Or just say certain things about
That's
some
right.
of their comments and stuff. I just put it in there and I leave it. I never go back to it, and I'll either just
Understood.
get out of it.
Yeah. Now, I kind of wanted to kind of tie in to what I said earlier about insightfulness. Hollywood has been kind of beaten, as well as tried to make its efforts of making the place or the entertainment space feel inclusive, making things feel comfortable for everyone of different backgrounds and colors. And so when you had this moment here, kind of be in our faces. Once again, somewhat of it struck as a reminder. Just from your experience with Hollywood, did it ever get kind of volatile like that, where you were running into incidences where it wasn't someone with Tourette's was using that word, um behind the scenes on set? Because I've seen, the humor was different then, as well as just the energy and the inclusiveness was not where it is now. What was those experiences like then?
Well, fortunately, I have really never, since I've been a grown adult in the industry, have anybody call
Hmm.
me the N word. Like when I was on The Price is Right, and of course, I wrote the book Backstage at The Price is Right, Memoirs of a Worker Beauty, that encompassed the 10 years that I was on the show. Of course, I saw a lot of things backstage. You just kind of felt or sensed working over there at CBS with some of the stagehands, or with some of the producers, and the way people treated, especially not so much me, but some of the other stagehands, or people that were working behind the scenes, which were not many. Out of maybe 100 people working backstage, because there were a lot of people. You have to have your carpenters, your grips, your this and that and the other, and there were maybe 3 or 4 Black people working behind the scenes. And of course, we all kind of meshed together. You know how Black people have that just unconditional, hey, how you doing, brother, sister? We don't have to even know each other. But I understand there were some more underlining prejudice words that were said, especially in the production room. One time, I wasn't in the room, but one of the ladies who worked on the assistant to one of the producers said they threw the N word around there a few times. I was really like, what? And then, if they have online with The Price is Right, when people would come and stand online to get interviewed, they had a code on the paper. They had black, white, so and so, and this and that, just to tell the difference between the people. Now, whether or not that was right or cool to do, perhaps it was. But usually on the show, on The Price is Right, they did not discriminate too overtly for the audience, because you look there and you would see a lot of Black people and a lot of different type of people coming on down and giving the opportunity to play the game. So I never really ran into much of the prejudiceness
Yeah.
there like that.
Now, interesting you mentioned, on March the 18th, there's an episode of Dirty Rotten Scandals, or excuse me, the series Dirty Rotten Scandals is premiering 2 episodes, which is going to talk about The Price is Right. What type of stories in that particular series are we going to be hearing about related to you?
Well, we did the documentary, which is going to be on E Entertainment. Like you said, it's a 2-part series. The 18th and 19th, Dirty Rotten Scandals, and they're talking about Backstage at The Price is Right. And actually, they producers of the show, they used my book and based a lot of their information on the book and things I was writing about.
This one on One Moment is presented by Hypers Club. Watch the full interview right now at hypersclub.com by becoming a member.